My name is Arnaud Cormier. I'm working for the Publications Office of the European Union, and I'd like to share with you a bit of our journey with agentic AI. So I'll start with telling you what it is that we do. So the Publications Office of the European Union is the publishing house of the European Union. We publish all official data. Most important for this talk is that any European Union law is only enacted once it's published on our site. And the original is digital since 2011, so we're responsible for making sure that the law is there and it's available for everybody. It's not only that, we're also responsible for the publishing of public procurement notices. We're publishing the results of EU-funded research. We're publishing and we're an aggregator for open data. Basically, our bread and butter is making sure that you have access, everybody has access to data that they can trust. Now, talking about that and the importance of the law, the journey started when somebody asked me a year ago, okay, Yolex, the law, at 75 terabytes, it's 15 million daily requests. And right now, where is it exactly? Well, it's in a hyperscaler. Okay, which one, and can we move it around? No, not can we move it around. Tell us by when you can move it around and where. That was a bit of a shock at the start because, you know, how do you move such a large shipping container that's in the middle of the Atlantic elsewhere? What is really that you want to do? And we started discussing. So an important disclaimer is everything I'm going to say is work in progress and we're learning along the way. So I'm going to share where we are now. Maybe 6 months from now, I'll have other things to share. But coming back to the substance, so we were trying to understand what it is that we really wanted to do. And obviously, the question was about resilience. So how much control do we really have on our system? How much autonomy do we have? And how can we protect it from external influences, whichever they are? And so that question is much more than just where the system is hosted. It's not a question of residency. It's a question of architecture. How scalable is it? It's a question of cybersecurity. It's a question of FinOps. I mean, are we financially resilient? How far can we go in the scaling? Because, you know, transparency, are there any limit to that? It's, of course, a question also of digital sovereignty. And while we were talking about all of that, we were at the same time in the middle of a handover takeover, so a change of provider for the maintenance of our systems. So we had contractors coming in and trying to learn how they could maintain the system. And then, while we were discussing about all those very important questions of governance, reality hit. Reality hit because we had a very big surge. I mean, much more than your average DOS attack. We actually still have no clue whether that was friend or foe. And what we know is that after this traffic increased, generally, our traffic had increased and we were at a stable level, but higher than before. So we realized then that our system, which has always been made for humans and to be consulted by humans, it was obviously, and for a long while, addressed mostly by bots, by large language models, by probably also hostile entities, but also that our whole architecture was outdated. So while we were thinking of how can we plan to move the system from one place to another, and how are we going to have the new contractor help us with that, we realized that we had an emergency and that we actually couldn't just replatform or migrate the system, but we had to rewrite it. So we changed the strategy. And that's when agentic AI came into play. No need to take a picture. This is not the actual diagram, but you get my vibe. We had to completely rework the architecture, and we learned a few things immediately. When you're working with Claude, because we used Anthropic Claude and we deployed it on Bedrock, we know that security through obscurity is a fallacy, but we still didn't want to put in a public environment our source code. So what we did was we reverse engineered the user requirements, which became our new source code. We did that by using Playwright, a headless browser that was driven by Claude, and that crawled through the existing Yolex. It gathered 750 user stories. We then gave it our source code, user manual, technical reference. We also gave it access to our Jira tickets, and it compiled all of that to generate a total of 1,050 user stories that were then curated by human beings. At the same time, we empowered product management to make sure that we would have control and prioritization over all of those user stories. We then as developers, originally one, to work with Claude and to start developing or re-implementing parts of the domain space, implementing a stratigraphic pattern. The problem there, I mean, a few interesting things we learned immediately were that we could finally do proper test-driven development, because the developers, maybe they get bored, but agentic AI, they do what we ask them. It's actually quite enjoyable to see the tester agent arguing with the full-stack agent developer in front of the architect agent. This is a bit like OpenClaw, but I mean, it's at least enjoyable for engineers. And then we realized that the model does scale when you have a single individual. When you have at least two developers working together on the same domain, then actually the performance of the team and the velocity trashes. So what we realized is the way we work had to change, the way we envisage the problem space had to change. We had to really compartmentalize the domain space and work much more on the interfaces. And talking about interfaces, that's another concept that we had to put in place. That's all the architecture principles became guardrails. So basically, any architecture decision record is written in Markdown, and it's part of our context. So we have our user requirements, which are part of the context, and we are formalizing them using Gherkin and Cucumber, which is a formal method and descriptor based also, I mean, formalized in Markdown. We have the tests which are automated by means of Playwright. So we have humans all around, and this is something else that I want to talk to you about. It's the role of humans in the whole chain and where we put them. So that's something you find emerging in the industry. It's the question of what is the human in the loop. That's the case where you really have the human interacting directly with the agents and controlling everything. So typically, in our case, we have the human in the loop for the product management. This is where we are deciding which are the user stories. We are curating them properly. We are selecting them and feeding them to our agents. We also have the human on the loop, and that's a typical case of the production of the code or the generation of tests. We are actually not reviewing every single line of code anymore. We have our test harness that's defined and reverse engineered, extracted from the existing system, so we know that when we have a difference, we can control it. Well, there are, of course, some corner cases. Agents can become very creative if you give them too much freedom. So once again, that's where we really insist on having humans in the loop for the definition of all the guardrails, of all the architectural principles, of all the decisions that we make to make sure that the project stays on track. Then there are also cases where we have human over the loop, and that's typical situations where the humans are only intervening when there's a problem. We are not so much there, but we envisage that we could actually go there for more broader concepts or concerns that would be fed into our contexts. The human out of the loop, that's for the moment an area where we don't go. Maybe one day, but at least not in the foreseeable future. Well, I'm saying that, but foreseeable future now is very narrow, because it might be that in a couple of years the situation has completely changed. So I'm actually already hitting my conclusion. The AI, sorry, just a second. Yes, the first conclusion is not to use AI to reproduce exactly what we were doing before. So what we learned when we started discussing with Claude about what to do and how to handle our immediate problems, if you remember the crisis where we were having, the advice was stop thinking about replatforming and moving your current outdated architecture, which was meant for humans, immediately do something different, immediately consider MCP, immediately consider splitting your architecture into a hexagonal model, and making sure that you can scale and you can control you can manage your APIs and the accesses that you're giving to the different entities that are requesting data from you. Another lesson that I'm learning, or something that I want to share with you, is in an age where AI is helping you implement your systems and is helping your users develop their systems at such speed, The question of shadow IT can be asked in a very different manner. It's not so much about preventing, I mean, that's what we've been doing so far in a way. We were saying we are the IT, we are the architecture, we know how to make software, you come with your requirements, we have governance, we prioritize them. But now we realize that in a way we as engineers are not that much needed anymore. The developer role is changing quite a lot. 15 years ago I was working in IT for translation, so I could see how the translators' work was shifted completely, overhauled. Translators became proofreaders. They were reviewing what machine was producing. And a bit the same way as developers are now driving agents and are using specifications as the new source code. But then the next step was that machine translation became so autonomous that there was no proofreaders required anymore. But then the linguists had become computational linguists, or they had become data scientists. Some of them still exist. You have linguists, but that's for a niche market. So my advice to a developer today would be either find your niche and then where your absolute value is, or embrace AI, or and become the supervisor, or become an architect who will enable the users to solve their own problems, because the agentic AI that help for development today will become smarter and better and more powerful over time, and it will be possible for your users to immediately access your data. And if you want to make sure that they do it in an adequate manner, give them access to the data, help them facilitate it, rather than trying to retain a control that you have already lost. So that's my advice, actually. Become an enabler for your users and turn shadow IT into a pattern, a way to actually implement the solutions and address your new problems and address them in the right way. So what we are observing is, that might be my conclusion. I mean, it's been a while I haven't written a line of code, but AI scales, AI is general purpose, and AI touches directly on human cognition. It means it's going to change everything. And what we can retain, and thank you for mentioning this earlier, is our critical thinking, the fact that we are humans, the way we interact with humans. Those are values or curiosity, and that's what we should probably go on applying, no matter what happens. And I'm now open for questions. Yes? Yes.
There were a sentence about cloud changing, yes or no. Could you please go deeper in
So yeah, the whole idea was reducing vendor lock-in. And actually, yeah, I haven't talked about that much. This is the answer that we have, is platform engineering. Thank you for bringing this to me. So the idea was, how can we avoid vendor lock-in? And how can we avoid vendor lock-in also for the place where we are hosted? So we are right now in a hyperscaler. The question is, what if there's any problem with that hyperscaler? Can we move? The answer right now is, well, it's going to take a big project, and that's a project we're running now with the help of agentic AI. But what we managed to do while refining the approach was to say, actually, it's not to go from one vendor to another. That's not what we want to do. What we want to do is to go for an abstract definition of a platform that would map on any vendor. And if you think about it, most hyperscalers or most other hosts will offer you a number of services, and they will be different. And they will hope that they meet your requirements, your needs, and that you will really be feeling good in there. And the plan is to have an abstract definition of the services you need, 20, 50, 40, whatever, with mappings. All of that as infrastructure as code, architecture as code, and you develop against that. And then your GitOps, your pull requests are just the business code that you have. It's the container anti-pattern. Instead of having the developer teams putting everything inside the container and then pushing the container and they're responsible for everything, they're actually responsible for only their business logic, and they use abstract services. And that's where we're going.
Merci beaucoup.